Welcome back. This is the Retro Horror Academy. My name is Daniel Richardson, and today we're going to be looking at the year in horror 1913. In 1913, we saw yet another screen adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This one would star King Baggett, future movie star slash filmmaker, and the cool thing about this was it was literally released by a studio, IMP, which would later become Universal Pictures. So this was technically the very first Universal horror film, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, over in Germany, the big film that was released over there was The Student of Prague. This is loosely based on the Edgar Allan Poe, William Wilson, I believe is the story. But it'd be directed by Paul Werner, who would go on to become pretty prolific in the horror community. He would direct the trilogy of Gollum films over there. So, yeah, that was 1913. Now, last week when we did this show, we, kind of broke new ground because previously all we've ever done was rank the top film of the year, give it the Golden Skull Award, went home. And last week we actually went crazy and we ranked two films and we gave out a Silver Skull and a Golden Skull, respectively. Well, this week we've gone bonkers because there is now 4 films that we're going to rank. And the top 3 films will, of course, be given the Golden Skull, the Silver Skull, and the Bronze Skull. So, without any further ado, without stretching this out anymore, without literally just trying to run out that clock, let's go ahead and get right down to The Skull. Basically, it's about this guy. I don't know if he's a banker or if he just works in like a place that has vaults. I guess he's a banker. I guess it's a banker. But anyway, someone brings in this necklace. And so, he's kind of in charge of keeping this necklace safe and, in his bank. However, he decides he's going to take it home because he has a better safe at home to keep it safe. I find that logic hilarious because this is, 1913. Could you just imagine, someone brings, $10,000 to the bank and you're like, well, instead of keeping it in that safe, I'll take it home and put it in my safe. It'll be just fine. No, you'd be arrested. Guess what? You can't do that, jackass. But back in 1913, apparently it wasn't a big deal. No one batted an eye, and he was going to take the necklace home with him. However, he had an employee who kind of saw him. We see the shifty eyes. What the hell? And so he decided to recruit his friend, who looks like he's probably more of a professional criminal. And together, they decide they're going to break into this guy's house and steal that necklace. This is kind of like the first home invasion horror film, I guess, technically. So that's kind of cool. So anyways, that night, the banker's called away. He's got, something else to do. He just leaves his wife home alone. And, of course, the 2 burglars break in. And she faints, and goes down. While they are looting the safe, they crack the safe, they pull out the necklace. Just randomly, these college boys are just decide to do a prank and throw a skull through his window. Why? Why would you? I don't know. Anyway, they throw, luckily, talk about a Deus Ex Machina right there, because they definitely just, saved the day here. They throw the skull through the window, and the burglars are like, oh my god, skull, must be ghost, run! And they Scooby-Doo out of there. Take off running. Well, the wife finally wakes up, and she sees the necklace and the skull, and she decides, I'll just hide the necklace and the skull. Well, the criminals are like, oh yeah, we need that necklace. I forgot. Let's go back and get it. Because they dropped it for being scared. And so when they're coming back, she pretends to be unconscious, goes back down. They come in, but all they see is the skull. Necklace missing. Oh my god, it really is Ghost. Run! And they run away again. I guess people were just easier to scare back in 1913. I don't know. So anyways, the husband comes home, the banker, and he realizes, oh my god, my house has been broken into. But you know what? He's relieved to find that his wife's okay. And she hid the necklace for him. So next day, they take the necklace back. I guess the guy comes back to get it. And anyways, the wife's there, and she recognizes the employee as the one who broke in the first place. So they call the cops. He gets arrested, and because apparently they didn't have the phrase "snitches get stitches" back then, they literally he rolls over on his friend. They both go to jail. Happy ending. Once again, when this came out, the critics were all about this. They loved what they called at the time a very unique story, and something they hadn't seen before. And they really liked how these series of coincidences kind of just built and kept kind of ramping up. It's funny because I'm looking at this going like, well, I mean, it is unique and original story, I guess, but it's like, man, that's just a lot of convenience. Like they're literally just throwing a bunch of conveniency up on the screen. We're just random pranksters going to throw a skull. Why are they throwing a skull through his window? Can we not get a little? It's like one scene, just one scene where they're like, hey, here's why we're doing this. We don't like this guy. He used to be our boss. We're going to throw a skull through his window. That would have been all you needed, but they didn't do it. It just comes out of nowhere, skull, and then boom, there you go. But anyways, it was very well received in its time, and yeah, it's our number 4 movie. So moving on, we're going to talk about the number 3 movie, and the first ever winner of the Bronze Skull Award. This is also written by Edgar Allan Poe, and which I'm blanking on the name. It's actually not even Gordon's not even mentioned in the title. It's like Professor Plume or some shit. I don't know. But anyways, in this story, this visitor goes to this mental asylum, an insane asylum, I guess. Sorry. And when he shows up at the asylum, it's very clear right off the bat that the inmates have taken over. Like that's just all there is to it. And so as he's talking to them, he's trying to fit in and not let them know that he knows that they're a bunch of lunatics. It turns out that they have a very insane method of dealing with people. And so what they were doing is they were getting the patient without. It never is clear if these were the former staff and they were just kind of forced to be prisoners in this asylum, or if it's just the unfortunate crazy people who didn't quite get out of their cages. And even though you got a group of people walking around going like, we're doctors, and they're not. They're kind of turned on their own. I don't know, it's never quite clear. But either way, their ideal of medicine is let's remove their eyeball and then slit their throat to let the insanity out. And so the doctor decides to go check it out, and he goes to do it, and he comes out covered in blood. And of course, the visitor just freaks. God damn, that is bleak. Is that not just the craziest thing? That's 1913. How fucking dark is that? Insane. So this, like I said, this is Edgar Allan Poe right here, and kind of cool that in 1 year he bust out, or not him, I guess, but people bust out 2 different movies based on his work. The critics at the time, it was like a weird double thing. Like at first they're just like, well, it's a beautiful film, technically it's really great. It just has a lot of terrible stuff in it, and I'm just like, that's awesome. That's like people who like watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre and they're just like, it's shot really great, but why does that have to be so dark? That's kind of the same thing here. They're just like, oh yeah, no, this is a great film. It looks great. It's fantastic technical achievement. However, my God, it's really dark, and they're unhappy about that. But there you go. The experience. And it was actually released as as the Lunatics here in the U.S. So, but yes, the experiments of Dr. Gordon right there. So, and then we're gonna move on now to the number 2 film of 1913 and the winner of the Silver Skull Award. Basically, in A Student of Prague, what happens is, there's a young guy who runs out of money, has no more money, can't support himself, and of course, he's at this college or whatever, having a party with his friends, and when he realizes he runs out of money, this sinister figure kind of shows up, gets in his ear, kind of promises he can help him out, but he, declines it. But everywhere he goes, this guy kind of follows him, and eventually, kind of with this sinister figures meddling, it leads him to it's like a lake or a river or something. And this countess ends up, or she's a princess or a count, I don't remember. A young girl gets launched off of her horse into the water, and he's the one that saves her. And so he falls in love, but turns out since he's not royalty or rich, the father don't really want anything to do with him, and so he kind of gives in to this man, to this sinister figure, to help him out. And of course, in doing so, he unleashes essentially, I guess, like his doppelganger. Like it comes out of the mirror, and it's him. And so, anyways, while he's courting the countess, and she loves him. However, she's kind of been promised to a baron, and this baron shows up, kind of a dick. He's a Chad for sure. And so they decide they're going to duel. Like there's no other way around this. We must duel. And so everybody's asking, the main guy, do not do this. Do not kill this guy, please. And he's like, I'm not going to do it. Don't worry. I mean, I'll talk my way out of it. But unbeknownst to him, his doppelganger has already dueled him and killed him. And everybody thinks he's done it. And so when he's trying to, clear his name, no one's listening to him. And so he does finally flee. But everywhere he goes, this doppelganger's chasing him until finally he puts a bullet in him. But essentially, he puts a bullet in himself. So, as I mentioned before, the Student of Prague was loosely based on Edgar Allan Poe. It was also based on this other poem at the time, and also on Faust, which you can definitely see, the connection there. So, it's got a lot of, it's rooted in a lot of, really good stuff there. But it's also kind of unique because it was, the screenplay itself was written by Hans Ewer, and apparently he's a famous horror writer from Germany. So you got this like pedigree here almost of just like awesome talent, especially for as far as the story goes. But then it stars Paul Werner, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Werner, and he would also co-direct this. He was uncredited, but he did a lot of co-directing here. However, he would go on to do the Gollum trilogy and a few other horror films. Like the guy became a horror director, on a full-time basis almost. And so, anyways, you just see like I don't know, it has the makings. It has like the perfect behind the scene or behind the camera concoction of like this perfect team work together. This film is considered by many to be the very first art film. Because at this time in cinema, movies aren't really taken that seriously. They're a novelty act. They are something you see in like a sideshow. Not anyone's taking this too seriously. And this is the first film to come along where it's like, here's a full, written out story, and kind of raised it above just being a, moving picture that you go see on the weekends. Like, no, this actually became cinema. This is film right here. And so, yeah, many consider this to be the very first art film. And it really did kind of go a long way into establishing, this as a, more, I guess, higher brow, work of art as opposed to just, moving pictures, Again, back to back. My God, the 1912 version took the Golden Skull in the last episode. Now the 1913 version is taking it here. As I mentioned before, this was King Baggot as the both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and undisputed. There's a lot of dispute on if James Cruise in the 1912 version actually played both versions, or if they had another guy play the Mr. Hyde part. But here, it is, it's just one guy, King Baggot, he did it. And like I said earlier, it is an IMP film, which would later become Universal Pictures. So again, this is like technically, not officially, but technically the first Universal horror film. And so anyways, again, a classic tale. We all know the story by now. Literally, it's, Dr. Jekyll's trying to kind of tap into the mind, see if he can uncover some darkness there. But when he does it, he unleashes Mr. Hyde, his dark, murderous, self. And so Once again, critics really liked this movie back then. A lot of people praised the performances, especially by King Baggett. But no, I mean, like I said, I thought he looked good. I thought his performance was good, and like I said at the time, everybody liked it. So there it is, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde once again winning the Golden Skull Award. So guys, that's it for this week. On behalf of the Retro Horror Academy, my name's Daniel Richardson, and you're dismissed.